Of course, Jim Miller here with us on the program. UFC 200, Takanori Gomi during UFC 200 Fight Week, Expo Week, Brazilian National Championships, the International Amateur Mixed Martial Arts Championships. It's a huge week. I mean, it's a big week. You're a fight fan as well as being a fighter. So fighting on the Expo Week, you'll get there on Tuesday, obviously, is normal. You weigh in on Friday. You got to fight on Saturday. Is it tough for you to be in Vegas at that time during the fight week, knowing that all the vendors for whether it's supplements or clothing, whatever, are all going to be there, all the apparatuses? Obviously, you have your gym with your brother, as we can see the banner behind you. Is it tough for you to be like, I got to focus on a fight, but there's this other thing that's right down the street I want to go to?
No, not for me. I'm pretty good at focusing. That's kind of, I think one of my better traits when it comes to this sport is kind of focusing in on the fight and trying to block out everything else. It's going to be hectic. It's going to be a crazy week. Huge fights, like you said, the Expo. But it's cool and it's exciting to be around that atmosphere. So I'm fired up to get out there and to put on a show and interact with the fans as well.
I have a few friends that are flying in from the East Coast for this. They'll be at your fight, but they'll also be at the fight the night before and the fight the night before that. They're taking their normal summer week vacation is wrapped around the UFC Fan Expo, and they're married with families, and this is like their guy trip. The wives go on their women's trip, and this is their guy trip. They're coming, and then I was like, well, so what guys are coming with you? And they're like, oh, actually, it's all the wives are coming too, because now wives like the fights too and want to be at the Expo. So now it's become a bigger deal, a better thing.
Oh, yeah.
Is it, you say you have a really easy time focusing, but you're also really, really, you're a family guy. You like being with your family. These guys are going on vacation for a week. You're going to work for a week. Are you bringing your family with you to Vegas during this time?
No, my wife will come out, but the kids are going to stay back in Jersey. My kids are too young. My oldest just turned 6. So it's not like they're in their teens or anything like that where, you could get around it and they could realize the magnitude of the situation. So they're gonna stay home. They know what I'll be doing. At least the older two do. They know that I wrestle guys in the cage, and they call it the muscle show. But they're a little too young to kind of bring around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I waited. My eldest now is 22, but he didn't start coming until he was like 10, and he would be with my dad the whole time. And we weren't in Vegas at these fights. It'd be Atlantic City. We'd dip in and dip out. It was in the Mohegan Sun. We'd dip in and dip out. It wasn't like the Vegas scene where those other two are casinos, but they weren't casinos like Vegas casinos. There were a lot of other things to do. So I get it. I totally get it. And with kids that young, especially when your wife has to worry about how you're doing making weight and having to deal with your emotional state, and then having to worry about your oldest needs attention too, it takes away. So it's actually a smart deal. So I got to ask, I got to bring it up. You've been on a pretty shitty run lately, fight-wise. You won of your last 5 fights, and it's difficult for someone that I know is so dedicated to training and getting better and working hard. Let's just talk about Sanchez and Michael Chiesa. Let's just talk about those two. What happened during Michael's fight that you end up getting submitted by rear naked choke, which is totally uncharacteristic for you? What was going on? What happened during that? Was there something that you saw in the middle of the ring that kind of threw you off? You weren't sure what was happening, or take us through it a little bit and tell us from your point of view.
I felt good in that fight. I went into the Chiesa fight lighter than I've ever gone into a UFC fight, and I had as I'm getting older, these weight cuts are starting to really kind of suck. So I wanted to make it a bit easier on myself. So I came in, 4 or 5 pounds lighter than I normally do. So I felt good in there. I felt quick. I felt like I was getting the better of him, and I was being aggressive, and I went for the leg lock, and he was able to sit up and club me in the head a couple times, and it rocked my world. I don't really remember what happened after that. I watched the fight, and I saw that I went to rolled my back to the mat, and gave him mount. I don't remember doing that. All I remember was I got hit, things started going fuzzy, and next thing you know, his arms were wrapped around my neck. It was just one of those things. It's, he hit me in the right spot.
I've been talking a lot about head trauma and long-term effects of it. And that's one of the signs. It's happened to me as well. Is like, what happened? I don't know. Like, I see it because I see it on tape, but I don't remember it internally. I don't remember actually doing it. So it's like, that's a tough spot to be in. And you mentioned about how the weight cuts as you're getting older are getting tougher and tougher. What do you think about the new weight cutting certification that they did? They just did it last time for UFC 199. Weighed in early, between 10 and 2 instead of the 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock is for, it's for the fans.
Yeah.
But the real weight gets done earlier. Gives you longer time to rehydrate, which is great, obviously. But they're also doing dehydration tests on you as well, at least in California. And then, of course, in Nevada at UFC 200, they're doing it as well that entire week. What are your feelings on how the UFC specifically, because they are leading the way, approaching the weight cut, and approaching how guys are making weight now?
I like the direction. Execution wise, I might not fully agree with the way that they're going about it. It's as a fighter, it's tough because it's like, okay, well, what do I do? This fight coming up here, I was going to tell Joe Silva that I'm going up to 70s because I'm done making 55s, and he sent me Gomi's name, and it's like, that's too good of a fight, So it's tough. Like, I'd prefer if I didn't have to cut weight, I'd like to go up. I could walk into, the 170s pretty easily, but I'm not going to get any taller. I'm 5'8". I know if I feel good, I'm going to fight, at my best. And I've had some tough cuts and I've felt, sluggish inside the octagon before, and it's taken its toll. And, so I kind of have to balance that. You're going to see changes happen in the near future in the weight classes and the way guys are going. It's just kind of some of the things like I understand what they're doing with the IV ban, and why they're doing it. But I'm more scared of fighting with a dehydrated brain than I am fighting somebody that's been using steroids or is blood doping, and the reason that they got rid of it. I got 4 kids and I got to remember their names. So, I mean, that's the scary part for me is that I think the decisions were kind of biased in the way that they did it. They said, oh, well, it's the hydration's about the same if you drink and if you IV, but they were doing them exclusively one or the other. Where my fights before, when I was able to IV, I was drinking the same amount as I was now. My limiting factor is the fact that I feel like I'm going to puke. I'm trying to drink as much as I can, even when I was taking 2 liters. So I think that you've seen some guys get rocked from shots and knocked out, guys that weren't getting knocked out before, and Chiesa, that was the first fight that I haven't had an IV. He was sitting on his butt and he hammer fisted me behind the ear. And, I've been hit a lot harder than that and not gone wobbly and, not had to, my vision tighten up. Was it because of not IVing? I don't know. But, the scary part is that damage is going to happen. If it is causing any damage is going to happen and you're not going to see it for a couple of years.
Yeah. And you actually raise an interesting concept. Like, I'd rather fight somebody on steroids than be dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather fight somebody blood doping than be dehydrated. And the IV ban, in my personal opinion, comes from cycling, because cycling had to ban it because you can mask everything that you can put in your system. You can mask through an IV, and that's what they were doing. And now cycling has gotten better. They've gotten smarter. They're microdosing. So when you take these blood levels and take the urine tests and the blood samples, it's always the same. So as opposed to giving one big shot once a week, they're doing minuscule shots every day, and that's what cycling is doing because they're advancing the beat. It's how it works. The criminals are always going to be ahead of the police.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes. So the IV ban, is my personal belief, is they brought it in from cycling because they brought forgive me, I forget his name, the guy that caught Armstrong into the UFC. He's now part of the UFC, so he's helping set everything up, and this is obviously pulling it from a cycling standpoint. But in cycling, if your brain is dehydrated, you're just basically making circles with your legs, and you're going in a straight line. And you're riding your bike for 6 hours, and then you get, or 5 hours, and then you get like a full rest of the time, a full 19 hours to rehydrate before you go do it again. Okay, so I understand their point over there. They're not getting punched. They're not getting elbowed. They're not getting kicked. So it is a big deal, and especially when you have 4 kids and want to remember their names. I agree. I'd much rather fight somebody on steroids than fight dehydrated, for sure. I want a clean sport, but like I said, there's I weigh the options, and CTE and dementia and those things, they scare the hell out of me. Being a 11-year pro at this, and I haven't been rocked, I haven't been knocked out that many times. It's I've been lucky, but it's, I don't know. I feel like you're kind of playing with fire, and it could have the issue is that if it does have repercussions, if it does have a negative effect on us as fighters, we're not going to see it for a couple of years, and they're not going to be able to change it, and they're not going to be able to fix it until you start having guys, start going through these, post-concussion syndrome, even more than we've already had, and all these other things. And you said something earlier, too. When they're doing the testing on drinking fluid versus IV fluid, you're getting hydrated the same amount. I want to see a study done drinking, IV, only drinking, only IV, and then drinking NIV. Because that's what we do. We IV and we drink. And like you said, I have to stop drinking because I'm going to throw up because I've put so much weight. My body can't react to the food and the sources I'm putting into it, so it starts shutting down. So I've got to have both at the same time. I want to see what that study does. And I guarantee you, just because I know how it feels, that it's going to show that, you rehydrated 14 times faster by doing both.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. So let's talk about Gomi. Big puncher. We're talking about, brain traumas. Big puncher. Historically horrible on the ground, which is where your forte is. As a analysis guy for the sport, I'm looking at it. Gomi wants to keep it on the feet. Jim Miller wants to try and get him on the ground, but Jim's not scared to sit in the pocket and throw a couple of punches to get him offset to get the shot. So Jim can also knock him out. Gomi's only way of winning is by knocking you out. That's it. He's not going to be able to submit you. He's not going to outgrind you. He's not going to be able to decision you because he's not going to, unless he rocks you super early and then the whole time you're fighting, you keep your wits about you. He can't decision you. He doesn't have that technique against you. How do you see this fight, though? That's my analysis. I'm not the guy stepping inside the cage. How do you see this fight breaking down?
I see it pretty similar to that. He's very unorthodox, but at the same time, he's very predictable in that. You know that he's just going to throw these big looping punches, and fight's really short. And I know that he's got a weakness on the ground, but he is dangerous. So like I had said before, I saw his name and I was like, coming off of a 2-fight skid, and only winning 1 in my last 5, like this is a good fight for me, and it's, I know that if I do what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to go out and I'm going to put him away. And that's the fight, going out and fighting my fight and being me.
Did you tweak anything during this training camp? I know because you're a 1% guy. You always want to get a little bit more, a little bit better every fight. Did you tweak anything? I'm not talking like changing a whole camp or changing a whole coach or anything, but did you tweak anything during this?
Not really. The last year with some of the other stuff going on has been tough on me. And so hopefully I kind of figured everything out, and hopefully I'll be the old Jim. So other than kind of getting back, and feeling like I had been feeling 2 years ago, other than that, I really haven't tweaked anything. It's more just, I come in, I've never been a big fan of sparring more than once a week, honestly. When we were sparring twice a week, that's when I started seeing a lot more injuries, and basically limped into fights, and, was lucky enough to win some of them and, and drop some of them as well. But, I spar once a week. I get in my technique. I get in my workouts so that I'm, my cardio and conditioning and stuff. And, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling explosive again and capable of scrambling. My last fight camp sucked. So I'm just happy that I kind of righted the ship. And
your last fight camp, was it emotional and mental, or was it physical?
It was physical. Okay. It was physical. Yeah.
11-year vet, you can get in there and like physically I can get through anything, but today I just mentally I'm checked out. Like I just can't be there. So it's like I get how that mentality happens sometimes too with the mental aspect. You're kind of talking like you're not that you're ready. I'm not saying by any means you're ready, but you're looking. It's almost like you're looking at the end. Like you're like, hey, my time being a fighter is coming towards the end of it. So I'm kind of thinking about what's going on. Like the things you mentioned during this interview, you're kind of like, you've got that thought process already. Like, okay, at some point this is going to end. I got to be set up. Have you set up your future besides Miller Brothers Mixed Martial Arts Academy? Is there other things too you've got?
Working on some other things. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to balance it. And I knew, I knew earlier in my career that transition period was going to be hard, and it is hard. And a couple weeks ago, I saw Alan Belcher posted something saying that fighting was easy and being an entrepreneur is the hard part. And man, was he right. It's a couple of years ago when I was newly married and just a fighter, just a professional athlete. All I had to worry about was training. Became a father, easy enough. Love having my kids. It was very, it was good for me. But now balancing, multiple different businesses and, getting the training in and dealing with all this stuff, it is hard, and, so I've been working towards that, that goal of being, capable to provide for my family after fighting is over. But yeah, it's definitely busy, I never wanted to just say, okay, I'm done with fighting, like maybe a devastating injury or just one day wake up and not want to do it anymore. And then be like, all right, now what? So I've been trying to make that transition and I'm not quite ready there to say, all right, I'm done fighting, but I feel like I'm in a lot better place set up wise than I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
And let's be honest, this for the folks at home. He's 32 right now. Jim is. He could be fighting until he's 40. So we're talking about he could easily have 8 more years, but getting that thing set up and one big injury, one big slip, one big freaking retarded thing. You never know what's going to happen. You got to be set up early. That's smart.
All right.
That's smart. Yeah. Taking care of the family. Jim, thanks so much for coming on here, man. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your training camp, and I'll see you. I'll see you down there. I'll be. I'll wave at you during weigh-ins. All right. Take care, brother.
Have a good one, buddy.